Hi everyone, happy Monday, happy Labor Day, and welcome to this channel. We're going to be talking about some new fragrance releases in this weekly rendition of Smash or Pass, a series on this channel where I talk about the newest fragrance releases and we do a bit of window shopping. We talk about what we like, what we don't like, we talk about the notes, and it's just a fun time for us to reconnect after the weekend and just chat about fragrances. If this is your first time on this channel, hello, my name is Anya. I love fragrances. I talk about them here at 5 times a week, Monday through Friday. I also publish additional content on TikTok and Instagram under the username ANECHKAFRAGRANCES, and I do have a fragrance and beauty podcast called The Fragrance Report. If you're interested in listening to a new podcast, it's available on Spotify and on YouTube. I launch a new episode every Wednesday. Also, if you want to be a bit more mindful with your fragrance spending, if you want a better way of keeping track of what's in your collection, I have a solution for you. It's the Fragrance Collection Log and Expense Tracker. It's available for you to download in my Stan store. So, like I said, we have a lot to get through. So let's get started. All right, clearly it's a different day. I'm filming this in segments, but the first fragrance I want to tell you about is by Paco Rabanne. They're launching a flanker of their Fame fragrance, and this will be called Fame Feline. Fame Feline will have notes of mango at the top, a mid of jasmine, and a base of incense. On first glance, when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh, it would be kind of fun if there was like a little bit of leather in there. But then when I actually think about like the notes in the original Fame fragrance, that is a kind of tropical floral fragrance. So it does fit. I feel like it does make sense that like the kind of like the note here that's making it a bit edgier is the incense note. So this does make sense. I think it's cute. It fits in with the Fame aesthetic. This is an aesthetic that I particularly like. Kind of like, I think it's cute, but this is not for me. But yeah, it seems interesting. This is something I would like to try. I'm always someone that likes to see like darker, more intense notes, like incense, leathers, ouds. That's something that I appreciate. So this is something I would be interested in testing. Next, we have a new launch from Jo Loves. This is Jo Malone, but Jo Loves is her own brand. And she basically has this new fragrance called Roses and Dates. Roses and Dates will have notes of pink pepper and dates at the top, a mid of jasmine, peony, and rose, and then a base of amber, musk, vanilla, and incense. The thing about this fragrance is that I absolutely love the idea of including dates in a perfume like this, because dates are usually going to have that honeyed sweetness, and it adds that sweetness to fragrances kind of like similar to honey. I think like my experience has been like dates usually perform in fragrances similar to honey, because if you overdo the date note, then it becomes a little bit too intense, but otherwise, like a light accent of it is usually pretty good. So Jo Loves, it's not like readily available where I live here in the U.S., but if you're a fan of Jo Loves, definitely do tell us like your experience, and also, are you excited about this? I feel like this is perfect for the fall time. We next have some new launches from Lattafa. Now, they have a bunch of gourmand releases. We have Vanilla Freak, Cookie Crave, Choco Overdose, Whipped Pleasure, Mallow Madness, Berry on Top, and yeah, it's basically a selection of all these gourmand leaning fragrances. And let's break down the notes individually before we actually talk about the bottles themselves. So Vanilla Freak will have notes of cupcake at the top, a mid of sugar, frosting, almond, and cinnamon, and then a base of butter, vanilla, and musk. Cookie Crave will have notes of butter and cocoa at the top, a mid of cookie, sugar, and milk, and then a base of whipped cream, sandalwood, and vanilla. Choco Overdose is a sweet vanilla fragrance with notes of chocolate fudge at the top, a mid of cupcake and cocoa, and then a base of vanilla, benzoin, and caramel. So far, this one would be the one that I would be, I think, the most interested in, because I love fudge, and I would like to I guess like experience a fragrance with like a fudge note. I think that cake-like accord would be very pleasant. And then Whipped Pleasure is an amber electronic fragrance with notes of salted caramel, caramel, and popcorn at the top, a mid of jasmine and milk, and then a base of benzoin, tonka, and musk. We also have Mallow Madness, and this is going to include top notes of strawberry and raspberry, a mid of marshmallow and freesia, and then a base of vanilla, musk, and whipped cream. And finally, last but not least, we have Berry on Top, which will be a fragrance that is sweet and vanilla forward with notes of chantilly cream and strawberry at the top, a mid of white flowers, sugar, and strawberry jam, and then a base of vanilla and musk. I have a few different thoughts about this. I did indicate that the fudge one was the one that I was the most interested in, and that is the case. But here's the thing, okay? I just feel like this is not I'm not the customer for this. This is kind of like using, I would estimate that this is probably like silicone packaging, and I've experienced this before because like the Anna Sue fragrances that they launched recently have like a similar kind of like tactile silicone packaging look or silicone bottle design. So it's tactile, it's interactive. This looks similar to that. But I will say, what I want when I want a perfume is I want a sense of glamour. I want to have a lovely experience. I want to have a fragrance that makes me happy to put it on as some sort of a self-care ritual. And that's why I gravitate towards fragrances that are beautiful. I gravitate towards fragrances that have a nice experience whenever you spray the fragrance, whenever you wear it. I know a lot of people, I can think of a few influencers as well, that would absolutely go for this kind of thing because this is cute, it's fun, it's like, I feel like the same people that like Labubus would like this. And that's not me trying to like over generalize or obviously judge, but for example, me, I'm not a Labubu type of girl. Someone who is into Labubus might enjoy this as well, because I think you're essentially creating something for like a subset of people that would like it, but when that thing is polarizing, like not everyone has to like this. So for me, like I'm a fan of like the Lattafa fragrances that are beautiful glass, opulent looking, but not garish. And this wouldn't slot into that category for me. So this would absolutely be a pass. The kind of thing that I'd like to have a decant for, like I'd like to have a travel size. I wouldn't necessarily like to have a bottle because I feel like it just wouldn't mesh with like my aesthetic and what I want. What I will say is I've noticed this with the Aroma as well, and I think that we'll continue to see this with a lot of like other brands, but I think we'll start to see more and more Middle Eastern brands come out with travel size kits for their fragrances. Armaf, I believe, was one of the first brands that I saw come out with a discovery set of their fragrances. I think we'll continue to see that with other Middle Eastern brands. I have no doubt that Lattafa will follow suit on this, and that allows them to cater towards a customer that maybe would want to try the fragrances, but wouldn't necessarily want to commit to having several bottles that look like this in their collection. There's another fragrance that's also a little bit more experimental with the bottle design. This is from the brand Map of the Heart, and they have launched their ninth fragrance, which is V9 Wonder, presented in a bright yellow bottle, designed by Pierre Dinard and aimed to spark curiosity. So this new fragrance reportedly feels like a moment of awe, eyes wide open, heart open, and here are the notes. So we have bergamot, timu pepper, and mandarin at the top, a mid of osmanthus, mimosa, ylang ylang, and then a base of sandalwood, oakwood, and palo santo. So this fragrance, I don't always talk about pricing, I know I probably should, but this fragrance is retailing for 185 euros, which does align with the general aesthetic, with the fact that this is likely a custom bottle design, and this is a niche fragrance. Objectively looking at the notes, this would seem like something that I would definitely gravitate towards. It seems bright, invigorating, it feels refreshing, or it seems refreshing, and I believe I've tried this line before. I probably have a sample somewhere, but I can't remember. If we're talking about bottle design that's a little bit out of the box, out of the ordinary, this is a kind of inventive bottle design that I personally would align with because it seems like, yes, out of the box, but it's still an art piece. It's still something that's like conceptual, it's thought-provoking, it's interesting. So this is the kind of thing that I would be okay with like displaying, for instance, because it is art in and of itself. And this is art that I can get behind because like, this is art that like would speak to me personally. So this is kind of like there's a bit of difference, right? Like not everything has to be like a standard perfume bottle, but for me this is something that I would definitely want to have in my collection. I wouldn't necessarily want to have a brightly colored kind of like dessert inspired garish silicone bottle in my collection personally. We also have a new fragrance by Lorenzo Pazzaglia, and basically this is going to include, or rather, this fragrance is called Coffee Passion, and it will include notes of apricot, coconut, hazelnut, and cinnamon at the top, mid of coffee, coconut milk, chocolate, caramel, and tonka bean, as well as heliotrope, and then a base of sugar, cedarwood, benzoin, vanilla, and white musk. So basically, this is a coffee fragrance, and I will say, based off of what I've tried from Lorenzo Pazzaglia before, I don't necessarily know if this will be like my preference when it comes to a gourmand fragrance, because their fragrances are usually a little bit more intense. Okay, so I'm looking at one of their other fragrances, and it's $175. People have a right to price their fragrances at whatever the price they want. Consumers have a right to choose whether they want to spend their money on a particular fragrance. For me personally, I do not want to spend, or I would not feel comfortable spending close to $200 on a fragrance that has a bottle design that I know for a fact is not expensive to produce. It's one thing if you have a bottle design that's like very like aesthetically pleasing. It's another if you literally like slapped a sticker onto your bottle and you're like pricing it like close to 200. To me, that's too much. If this was like closer to 100, then we can talk. Like if it's like $75 or $100, no problem. Okay, no problem at all. But the marketing doesn't seem to align with the price, you know? Like if you're having kind of like a stock image, or even if it's not a stock image, a graphic of like a sticker, and then that you just have that pasted onto a bottle, and you're selling your fragrances for $175, I wouldn't pay that. Like, I wouldn't pay that. I feel like that would be a little bit too much, and I know a lot of people would, because I know this brand is extremely popular, and that's totally fine. But that's not my preference. So I like the fragrances. I think that some of their scent profiles are a little bit too much for me, but I have encountered a few that I liked, but this would likely be a pass. There was also a new fragrance by Juliette Has A Gun. This is called Madeleine Imperiale, and this has top notes of madeleine and juicy orange, a mid of creamy vanilla and toasted tonka, and then a base of golden honey and woody notes. This does sound rather enticing. Apparently this is going to be primarily a woody fragrance. I'm definitely going to test this at Sephora when it becomes available there. But yeah, this does seem rather interesting. Do I need another gourmand fragrance? Probably not, but do I have like a Madeleine fragrance in my collection? No, not really. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to be like very mindful when it comes to adding new fragrances to my collection, because I feel very like happy and fortunate to have a large fragrance collection. Like I have over 150 bottles at this point. It's a mix between niche, indie, designer, Middle Eastern, and I feel very happy to have this sort of collection. But I don't know what it is. Lately, I've become like a little bit more overwhelmed with my fragrances. Like I feel like there's just so much, and I feel like something's gotta give. So like even when it comes to something I like, I'm very picky about what I add to my collection, and that's not because I think that brands aren't coming out with interesting things. I definitely think they are. Like I think that there are a lot of brands coming out with items, but I think that if you kind of like go through the noise and pick out the things that really matter to you, then you can have a great experience. But for me personally, I find myself so overwhelmed by fragrances sometimes. The fact that like, I mean, I want to try fragrances, but I definitely don't necessarily want to add fragrances to my collection needlessly. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of like consumption fatigue. Let me know what you think about that, but that's just been my experience so far. But yeah, that's it for this video. Those are all the fragrances I have to share with you. Let me know, what were your thoughts? I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get a little bit of fatigue when it comes to the new releases. There's just so much. It's really hard to keep up, and I start getting a little bit uninspired by some of them. But let me know, did you agree? Did you disagree with my opinions? What were your thoughts? I'm curious to hear your comments down below. But as always, thank you for watching till the end, and I'll see you next time. Bye!